a whole lot of people, given that it's August and we know that everyone takes the whole month off for vacation, like Europe. If you want to go on camera and react to the fact that we're now dealing with the Delta variant, I'd be happy to see your frowns, your thumbs down, your good God, why are we dealing with this? Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Elisa. Yeah, but we're all in this together, and my safety cone hat, I'm running out of hats, people. I thought we'd be done with this and that we could go on our merry way, but we're not. We're all in this together. Today, we've got a lot of content. So you've received the slides beforehand. We'll go over them. We've got a quick little survey in the middle of our slides. We've got some presenters. So without further ado, let's just take a moment of silence to collect our thoughts and sort of center ourselves and remember those who have been affected by this nasty, nasty virus. All right, thanks guys, hang in there. So we've got some updates, and I see Alana Cables in the room. She's not on the slide, but we always love seeing our partner at HUD. So let me give her the floor if she has any updates to add.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. The only thing that two things I wanted to highlight. One, we have a new ESG CV notice that you probably all know about. We had training on it last week. Just wanted to highlight that. That webinar has been recorded. So if you didn't get a chance to see it, you can access it through the HUD website. That's one. And two, we are still working to get the COC grant agreements out the door. We're now on Q3. So just be patient with us. We're doing our best. We're going to be down another staff person next week. So the rest of us will be trying to do our best to make sure we keep all the balls in the air and everybody on track. On the entitlement side, I'm down to 10 of them that I'm waiting for their entitlement applications to come in, their submissions through the Econ Planning Suite. They're due no later than August 16th. We've been in contact with all of them. I have some ESG CV grantees that are a little bit slow spending. We have some home ESG CV terms that are working with them cooperatively. It's not a gotcha. It's how can we help you get this money out the door? So I've kind of teed up that conversation with our Connecticut grantees that are in that situation. So they're beginning to work with some of our headquarters personnel on that. That's it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Any word on the NOFA, Alana?
Not yet. Not yet.
I didn't think you'd forget to mention that.
Home ARP is taken over, I think, at the moment. I know they had a meeting with OMB on it yesterday. So we'll see.
Thanks, Alana. Just a couple reminders. You can unmute yourself, ask questions. You can use the chat room. We'd love to see people on video if you're video ready. Just a reminder, I'm John Mers. I'm with ACT, and I'm one of the 4 co-chairs. With us today is Sonia Jelks from CSH, and Steve DeLella from Department of Housing, who I will toss the ball over to now to talk to us about emergency housing vouchers, because I don't see Don in the room just yet. So Steve.
Thanks, John. So good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. So in terms of our emergency housing vouchers, as many of you know, the state received 548 of these with 5 different housing authorities. DOH is considered a housing authority, and we received the largest chunk of them, which is 380. So we have gone ahead and allocated the first 200 of those 380 out to the cans. And as you can see here, this is sort of how the allocation went, with 11 to Fairfield County, 51 or 48 to Greater Hartford, and then so on and so forth. So the cans are in the process of matching these folks based on our priorities. So we did complete our MOU with both BOS and ODFC, and our priorities are first basically the moving on process, where we have folks to move on from PSH units, because EHVs do not come with services, as everything we seem to be getting lately. So we're trying to provide the best match for households that do need services. So first priority, like I said, is moving on from PSH. Second is moving on from wrap rehousing, basically folks that have been in wrap rehousing but need longer term rental assistance support. Then we have, as our third priority, households that would meet the chronic definition, except for they do not have the verified disability. So these just maybe long-term homeless folks, which I know has certainly been an issue for us, because everything we tend to do is for folks with disabilities. So hopefully we can help out a couple of those households. Our fourth priority, let me think of that one. I know our last is DV. Oh, our fourth priority is just traditional chronic, as we would be doing elsewhere if we get down there. And also our fifth priority would also be folks experiencing domestic violence. So a couple bright spots on this. We've worked with JDA, because there is some funding that comes with this as well, $3,500 per individual, it says, for services, but in reality what they're looking for is housing location services. So 2 pieces of this. One, we're going to give some funding to JDA for 2 things. They have hired 2 staff specifically to deal with all of our homeless referrals, whether it's EHVs, mainstream vouchers, and Section 8 turnover. And from earlier reports, those 2 folks have been hired, and things are moving much quicker, which is awesome. So we're very happy about that. And then the second piece of this would be it's for JDA to hire an inspection firm specifically to work on providing inspections for the housing world, so they don't have to get caught up in the overall 15,000 other voucher holders that the state of Connecticut administers. So hopefully that will also quicken things up. So we're very excited and optimistic about these vouchers moving a little bit quicker than the traditional ones have moved. From then, once we have these 200 housed, we'll discuss the remaining 180 and kind of go from there. I know there also has been some concern among the Delta variants, so I'll give a little quick update with that. So we did have conversations yesterday with DPH, and we'll continue those. I know the shelters have expressed some concerns to us related to how we're going to reopen shelters and what things are going to look like. So in the short term, it looks like we'll be able to re-establish testing protocols like we had previously, as well as try to get more opportunities to get folks vaccinated. As we get more information, as we work with our partners, we'll continue to push that out, so you shelters have a better sense of what things are moving. So with that, I will pass it along. If anybody has any questions, drop it in the chat or ask me now.
Any questions? Seeing and hearing none. And I don't think Don has joined us, so I'm gonna toss it over to Lou at the Department of Education. Hey, Lou.
Morning. I know Liz had asked me if I would have any slides, and I knew I wasn't going to get to slides this week, so unfortunately you just have to look at my face and no slides. So good morning, everyone. So just a quick update with regards to education funds as it relates to the American Rescue Plan. Under the third wave, the ARP, ESSER, there was some, I think that I reported, maybe at it might have been at a BOS meeting and not this meeting, but that there was some additional funds that were specifically earmarked for homeless children and youth as part of that third wave of education funding. So that's being referred to as ARP, Homeless Children and Youth, HCY funds. In total, the state of Connecticut was allocated $7.2 million So that's a substantial increase from our regular McKinney-Vento allocation. There were some designations with regards, there are some designations required as part of this funding, and that is that 25% of that money under the first wave of funds that were received in early May, which is ARP1 funding, homeless children and youth, approximately $1.3 million needs to be issued to local education agencies, school districts under a competitive grant application that's similar to the requirements that are under the McKinney-Vento Act. So it's a competitive grant application that is administered through the State Department of Education to school districts to compete for based upon need and quality of the application. Under these ARP1 homeless children and youth funds, we've already released about $200,000 to local school districts, and that was initially intended to carry school districts that were previously receiving funding that was ending on June 30th to extend supports and services to homeless children and youth over the summer and into the beginning of the school year. At that time, we intend to put out a competitive grant application opened up to further for all school districts to compete for. That would extend the pool in terms of the amount of money that we, the size in terms of the pool of money that we have available under that grant application, as well as the reach in terms of how many school districts we may be potentially receiving funds based on a successful application. So it's intended to expand both the size of the grant and the reach in terms of the number of school districts under that competitive grant application. That grant application is expected to go out probably this month, and we expect to start funding those applications on a 3-year term. So we will combine the annual appropriation that we receive under McKinney-Vento with these additional funds under ARP Homeless Children in One funds for the 3-year application term, to support a 3-year application term to local school districts who are successful in that competitive grant arena. Then the second pot of money that we just recently received from the federal government, U.S. Department of Education, the ARP Homeless Children and Youth 2 funds, that's approximately $4.1 million, of which those are going to be allocated by virtue of instruction from the feds, is they have to be awarded to local school districts as a formula grant. So it's going to be based on the information that we received. The guidance that we received just a few weeks ago was that a formula has to be determined in every state to award these funds to local school districts based upon their Title I allocation for the 2020-21 school year, as well as their homeless children and youth counts for either the 2019-20 or 2020-20, no, 18-19 or 19-20 counts of homeless children in their school districts. So we're currently coming up with that formula or executing that formula to determine what school districts and the amount that those school districts will receive. Those funds will be added to their already existing ARP application, the larger amount of funds, and they are intended to support specifically homeless children and youth on top of what they're already receiving under ARP ESSER funds in their school districts. So the funds will be combined. There is a minimum threshold for school districts that they have to be eligible for at least $5,000 in order to access those funds on their own. So the formula has yet to be determined yet for all the local school districts, but that will increase the number of school districts that have access specifically to funds that can address the needs specifically for homeless children and youth. So in addition to that, we will have $1.8 million potentially, I mean, depending on how much the state chooses to reserve for specific admin purposes, that we haven't made any decisions on. I certainly have some plans moving forward, hoping to expand on outreach and awareness and statewide activities for the supports of homeless children and youth. And then we'll be thinking about and executing hopefully some contracts that will, or grants that will support additional work being done throughout the state on behalf of homeless children and youth. Again, we haven't decided any of that $1.8 million, which we do have available to us for that 3-year term through September 2024. And then in addition to that, we are in the process of completing the federal application for these funds, because we've been required to submit a federal application to the U.S. Department of Education by September 7th of this school year, or this year, that will identify some specific points to requirements that the feds are looking into. While there is no specific requirement for that application to be publicly made available or required stakeholder feedback, I certainly am interested in levels of feedback that could come back with regards to it. Most of it's really kind of targeting like how we're going to put those monies out to school districts, et cetera. But there is a point in the application that does ask for how will we encourage local school districts to support contracts and work with community-based organizations on behalf of work that's being done with homeless children and youth. So while we can't require school districts in any of these pots of monies to award contracts to community-based organizations, I am interested in seeing what kind of encouragements could certainly be provided that would, move for the development of services. Either it's through the competitive grant application or through the use of some of those formula awards that are being offered to, or going to be provided to school districts in the near future to support homeless children and youth. And then some of certainly the work of the organizations like that are a part of, the balance of state and all of these, housing service programs. So we could, potentially, I don't know the mechanism, maybe through the balance of state, solicit some feedback with regards to the plan, which is certainly in first draft, that's going through a level of internal review. But once maybe that's made, kind of provided back to me, I could, at least put it out to, I don't know, a targeted group or even a statewide group to think about, ways to encourage LEAs to develop services or service level contracts to support school district or community work on behalf of families and children experiencing homelessness.
Great. Good luck spending all that money, my friend. This room is full of opinions, so we'd be happy to send out a link to that report and have folks give you feedback. Sounds like you need that done by September 9th?
Yeah, September 7th, it has to be submitted to the feds by.
Okay, so shoot it over to Liz Isaacs and we'll get it out first thing next week. Any questions for Lou?
I have a question.
Yep.
Thanks, Lou. A lot of money, a lot of strings attached. One's a formula, one's a competition. My heart goes out to you on that, managing that. Could you just give some examples of the kinds of activities that could be funded for homeless young people? Like, is it for clothes? Is it for laptops? Is it for internet access? Is it for special mental health services? Is it in-home tutoring? Who knows, whatever. But what kinds of things can you fund?
Good question. It's all of the above. I mean, with respect to what the funds have been allocated for, I mean, most of it aligns with, the uses that are authorized under the McKinney-Vento Act, which are a lot of what you've already described, right. But it also describes some specific pandemic-related expenses on behalf of homeless children and youth as well. So certainly, there's really, it's really been expanded. Even with some of the ARP funds, there is some potential for districts to be considering the use of funds for emergency housing-related services. So for the first time, like with McKinney-Vento funds, we generally can't support housing or homeless service level, in terms of like supporting their expense in a hotel or motel. With the ARP funds, there is some allowance for that. So the district has some availability on a very, very temporary basis to potentially help families to, obtain some kind of emergency housing related, like, most notably would be like to go into a hotel or a motel for a night or two, in order for them to maybe gain access to or supports and services, you know, further down the road with some of our existing resources in the housing world or homeless service arena. So yeah, I mean, it's really kind of, and I could share some of the examples that are part of the you know, what's already been distributed to local school districts or will be distributed to local school districts. But I mean, this isn't the first time that we would, I mean, even under the regular McKinney-Vento grant funds, there's certainly nothing that would, even though the grants have to be administered through local school districts, it doesn't suggest that, I mean, actually is encouraged that school districts look about what's happening in the community and supporting those services and those service organizations that exist with regards to specific supports to homeless children and youth. So we've had examples in our regular McKinney-Vento grants, New London being one with the Women's Family Center, with New Haven has supported some contracts with existing local organizations on behalf of, you know, outreach, awareness, identification, even doing levels of professional development within the schools to, you know, to encourage them with regards to the work on homeless or awareness with regards to homeless children and youth. So there's really kind of nothing that, you know, is expressly prohibited. You know, I mean, there are probably some things that would be, but I mean, we even have the use of, like, what we've never had, like with McKinney-Vento funds, the use of gift cards, right, to support, because usually the federal government, it's sort of a hands-off thing.
Yeah.
But with ARP funds, they're actually considering like gift cards to support food or clothing or things like that. Certainly have to have some perimeters on how they, you know, document those uses and follow up with that, on how those funds are being spent. We still wouldn't encourage, you know, districts to just go out and purchase, you know, $10,000 worth of gift cards and hand them out indiscriminately. But, you know, when we certainly have, there's opportunity in those areas to developing those kinds of, you know, mechanisms to support children and youth, so that we can keep them in school, get them in school and keep them in school. So it's really about, you know, I mean, just to your point, I mean, it's really about, I mean, I would say this, it's really about making those connections in the local schools, like, and saying, hey, listen, we understand you have these funds available to you, you know, developing proposals. Here's how we'd like to support you and what you can, how you can support us in doing it, right? We're coming to you. And I got to tell you, under the, especially the formula, these are going to be monies going to school districts that have never gotten McKinney-Vento money before in the past, specifically for the use of homeless children and youth that might want that, you know, you know, need to be developed further on how they could spend and support these children in their districts. Some of them may be as minimal as $5,000, right? But some of them in some of our larger communities could be upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know? So thinking about that, and I could certainly share, like, once those allocations are available with our programs here, to say, here's the amount of money that a specific school district is going to get allocated to them. You know, make a proposal as to what you could do to support homeless children and targeted at homeless children and youth, particularly those that are underserved in our state, like, you know, our unaccompanied homeless youth, you know, any kind of racial disparities, things like that, that could help, you know, develop further services with them.
So Lou, that was really helpful. And I guess the message for everybody in the room is make sure you're connecting with your school district, which you said, you know, and thinking about what the gaps are for homeless children and youth, you know, in terms of educationally. So it's great that it's so broad. Thank you.
Any other questions for Lou?
People don't have suggestions in the chat box of things they need. I don't know. Whenever anybody talks about money, I'm always thinking about how to spend it. Sorry, John, I'm out of order.
No, that's what I'm saying. We're full of opinions. So we'll wait to get to his report, and then folks can feed it back to him in that format. So take a deep breath, grab your coffee. We're gonna go deep into the weeds with Suzanne doing about 7 slides worth of really dense material. Don't think you have to memorize it. There's not going to be a test at the end of the meeting. This is for your information. There's a lot of links. Anything that's in green is a clickable link that will take you to the document. So this is really our way of giving you an overview of a lot of information in a short period of time. But if you have questions, put them in the chat. I think what we'll do is we'll wait until Suzanne's done with her slides before we sort of ask for verbal questions, and we'll take it from there. Suzanne.
Okay, thanks, John. I'm not going to read every word of the slides. I know some of you came for that, but I'm not going to do that today. John, let me know if Dawn shows up and you want me to stop and go backwards on this. So I'm just checking the chat box, sorry. But I'm gonna go, so I'm not gonna go through all the details. Everybody has this available. Remember, things are hyperlinked. If there is a question while I'm going along, you don't have to wait. You can just pop it in the chat or unmute yourself. Everybody, I mean, unless you live under a rock, you know that the federal government extended the eviction moratorium till October 3rd. So it's really incremental, which doesn't help us be planful, but certainly good news. There are declarations required, there are income limits, and you know, eviction would result in homelessness. So these are some of the details on that, but it is good news. And of course, Connecticut too. Oh, so, yeah. The CDC has a COVID integrated county view, so you can link to it, this underlined part here, to see if your community is at a substantial level of transmission, because you have to, in order to be eligible, and I'm sorry, I skipped this point and trying not to read every bullet, is that the county must be experiencing substantial and high levels of community transmission, right? So, and unfortunately, all counties in Connecticut indicated a substantial level of community transition. I'm not exactly sure what the threshold was. I don't know if Liz or Lauren will know, but if you don't meet the threshold, then the moratorium is going to expire. There are income limits. It's, as John was mentioning, it is actually targeting not only just poor folks, but people in the middle, but who may have, you know, experienced a severe loss of income in 2021. So there's income limits. I think most of the people we work with and many of the people who are on our staffs are eligible for the eviction moratorium, and other categories of eligibility where that people were very poor and didn't have to report income, or they got an EIP, which I'm just going to do a commercial for this now. But I'll say it again. This will be the thing I repeat today, is what we're seeing and hearing is that a lot of people in our programs are not getting EIP and they're eligible for it. And we have a lot of tools here, and hope that you guys can share them. I know everybody's really busy and now it's summer and vacations, but you know, people are entitled to these dollars, so they should get them. On Connecticut, like I said, is also extended their executive order through September 30th. So the CDC is, I think, October 3rd. I don't know, a few days in there. In Connecticut, you have to use Unite Connecticut, which we've heard a lot about, right? That's a really valuable program that provides funding to landlords when the tenant is, you know, lost income and is behind on their rent. Landlords must use the program before they move towards eviction. So there's protections right there because there's money there. And then they must have 30 days to cure, right? To resolve the debts that they have. So those are the specifics on it. If you have people who, hopefully our folks are paying the rent, but certainly if not, make sure they use Unite CT. So guess what? Masks are back. I thought I was putting them in the back of the drawer, but it's time to wear masks when we're in crowds, when we're inside. I would certainly think in all of your program spaces, you'll be wearing masks in meetings with clients, saying that there is a definition of an area of substantial or high transmission. I tend to be on the conservative side and think any kind of indoor environment where there's more than one person requires a mask. But in particular, if folks have weakened immune system, or people are aging or have disease, or people are, you know, unvaccinated, we don't want to be bringing COVID home. And I guess the reality is, and I think the short point that for everybody to think about is, even if you're vaccinated, you can get COVID, the Delta variant, and you can transmit Delta variant. And I know someone who had a wedding last weekend and 4 people ended up with COVID, 3 of whom were vaccinated. So That's the bottom line of where we are with the virus. The mask guidance for shelters is really unchanged. So we are maintaining precautions, which is really basically wearing masks when you're not eating or sleeping. And don't put them on little kids under 2. That's important. So you should get tested if you've been exposed, even if you are fully vaccinated, and you should take extra precautions if you're exposed for 14 days, because again, you can carry the virus even if you don't feel sick and even if you are fully vaccinated. And I don't know if we can carry it twice. I mean, I think that's a question maybe that's open right now of whether if you had COVID already, can you get it again with Delta, but who wants to take that risk? And then other new study on using HEPA filters and masking combined. If you're using HEPA air filters, hopefully folks have, maybe that's a good use of some resources that are out there. If you're using HEPA air filters and masks, you're really, really safe. It's about 90% of risk of exposure is reduced. So that's good news. And then I don't know anything about these links. I don't know if Lauren or Liz want to say anything, but CDC has some new guidance on when to modify your prevention measures and long-term strategy in homeless service settings and also for unsheltered settings. Let me just pause and see if Lauren or Liz wanted to add anything on what these are.
Sure, I can just say a couple quick things. So it's basically that the CDC is recommending, I mean, some of it's very common sense, is recommending that before you were to lift any COVID restrictions, you would want to consider things like the level of transmission in your community, the vaccination status of your clients and staff, the level of turnover in your facility, right? So there's obviously more exposure risk if it's a facility that has lots of clients in and out every day versus a facility where it's the same set of clients over time, the layout of your facility, the portion of your staff and clients that are at severe risk of COVID because they have, you know, some sort of underlying condition or age. And then to make sure that if you are going to reduce restrictions at any point, that you are able to quickly scale up quarantine and isolation precautions if it becomes necessary. So that's a quick overview of what those are.
That's very helpful. Thanks, Lauren. And that may be necessary depending on how, as I call it, COVID 2.0 goes into the fall. I hate to be a downer, but we got to be careful. All right. So is Dawn here? Do we want to go back up and do Unite Connecticut before we do this poll? John?
I do not see Dawn yet.
Okay. Okay.
So, so that was a lot of information. Thank you, Suzanne and Lauren, for chunking it down. If you click on those links and go to the CDC website, you will see pages and pages and pages and pages of information. So I thank you, Lauren, for making it palatable for that short period of time. All right, we've got a vote up. People are already voting, and I haven't even introduced it.
Sorry, my finger slipped. I really.
People are anxious to get on with their Friday afternoon. Okay, so you see the question, how often do you want to have these office hours? I was going to say happy hours. I think we'd get a different answer if I called them that instead of office hours. So we are willing, happy to do them at your bidding. So every month or every other month, or you're tired of this and you just want to have a Friday that doesn't make you think hard. So we've got, it looks like everyone's voted, we've got 42 people in the room. I know, Sylvia, we're all tired of COVID-19. Are folks thinking, or should we give them a minute? I know that.
How many? I can't see the poll or the results.
27 have voted out of the 42 that are in the room.
Maybe 10, 20 seconds.
Maybe
you can sing do.
That's what I'm doing.
People get.
Okay, it looks like for those who have voted, it's every month. And given that we've got 42 people in the room in August, it sounds like we're still providing a valuable service to you. So we will continue to do that. The next question before Liz pops it up, so I want to verbalize it. It's right there.
It's not a poll, John. It's not.
Oh,
it's not going to pop
it's not
up.
a poll. Oh, so you unmute yourself, put it in the chat. What topics should we be discussing? Anything
And we've been rotating kind of between, one is like a lot of updates, like this month by all the different partners and the BOS, the HUD or federal kind of updates from us. And then we'll have a subject like we had on, oh, I forget how she framed it, it was so good, but managing, you know, grief and loss and during the trauma of COVID. She was fabulous, Whitney. So things like that. So we've been alternating, you know, with presentations. So I'm not seeing a lot of things coming in the chat, guys. You know, it's hard for us to come up with a new show every month without some input.
Folks are typing, so we'll give you a minute.
Yeah. Tell us if you're not getting the EIPs, if you need more help with that, the economic impact payments. Moving on, maybe we should do a session on moving on. I'm thinking actually is now that just reflecting, we have a lot of content on moving on, and we're going to probably do like a full series of training on that, but we could certainly do an adaptation for this COVID office hours. I'm going to put that on the, you know, just kind of the practice part of moving on.
Yep.
So.
Okay, so we're getting some.
Yeah, we're getting topics.
Yeah. And you can continue to put things in the chat box as we move on. Employment in the midst of COVID-19, retaining staff, finding staff. We don't have any answers to those problems, but we certainly
give us things we could do.
we can at least commiserate, right? The question is, where are all the able-bodied people who don't want to apply for our jobs? Okay, so we'll keep receiving your good.
Yeah, people can keep getting the whole time because we'll get the chat after the meeting's over.
So now the next set of slides are really just reminders. If you've been with us time after time, this isn't new to you. If you haven't been, these are just reminders that I don't know, you can go to the next one.
Thank you, John.
The third round of impact payments are being sent in phases. It's happening. We've got a link to get my payment for those who, and these should be shared with your participants if they don't already have access to this.
And staff.
And yeah, absolutely, and staff. Many of our staff qualify for these. So just a reminder, they're coming. If you didn't get your first and second, the next slide shows you how to do that. Folks haven't lost out. Here's a shameless plug for one of the organizations under my umbrella, which is the Connecticut Association for Human Services. We do the Voluntary Income Tax Assistance Program. And while that's not currently up and running, that's a seasonal service that we provide. It's good to know about it. And again, folks, I want to say can make up to $57,000, still have their taxes done for free. So many of our staff should avail themselves to this. The average corner block tax service is $300. So we'd love to save every person on your staff and your participants $300 to plow back into their expenses. The next slide, just a reminder that legal aid is always available, and they've been helpful as well as getting people to their EIPs and channeling them to VITA, et cetera. So a lot of complicated things that a person might just need a legal advice on. We always like to promote partners who are working with us in the field. Child tax credit is still available. It's for folks who,
Sorry.
no, just, you know.
I can do this, John, if you want, because we did go over it last time. I mean, it's a detailed thing. You know, it is coming automatically. And I think people who have kids should get the money. And a lot of our clients should be getting this money in the shelters and people in housing. They have the kids, so we want to follow up. You can see the income requirements. It's very high, probably higher again than all of our clients and many of our staff. You get the rest when you do a tax return. So similar to in EIPs, even if you're not the person who does tax returns, doing the tax return is sort of the way you do this. So there's some tools, there's an online link, and you can register for your payments. So people should get it, you know, hopefully automatically. So I'll just get through the wonky slides for you, John. And then, oh, this is important. You want me to do this one too? I'll do it.
Sure.
So important when you're calculating income deductions and exclusions for rent purposes, which is a lot of BOSs about rental assistance, is excluding these things from income. So people are going to have gotten economic impact payments, hopefully. So that's excluded. That's what EIP is. The child tax credits are excluded. The earned income tax credits are excluded, and unemployment compensation from the federal FPUC. How's that for a, what do we call those? Anyway, federal pandemic unemployment compensation. So those would be deducted or excluded when you're calculating rent. And then HUD waivers have been extended through September 30th. So again, inching us along. I don't know why they don't just do these. Well, some are through the end of the year, but some are only through September 30th, just to make it complicated. And remembering that you have to notify HUD if you're going to use the waivers, even if you've done it already. You don't have to do it if you're subrecipient to DEMIS or DOH, because they've already submitted the letters. But if you are a direct COC grantee, you know the drill. Get your waiver letter in. Go, John, I'll hand it back to you.
So we have come to the end of our content. We've got lots of good suggestions in the chat box. You know how to reach us, not on this slide, but the next slide. We've got a whole list of emails. So 2 weeks from now, we'll be back together doing the steering committee meeting. That's where we deal with the business of the COC, which is different than providing information that's related to COVID and all of the stimulus. So we hope to see you back in this room in 2 weeks. We meet every month. That tends to be the third Friday of the month, but you see the dates here, the link. We send out announcements prior, often with the slide deck or the agenda. So we try as many different ways as we can to get the information to you. You can also always go to our website, which is ctboss.com.
No, .org.
.org. All right, it's somewhere.
And there it is. There's our website there, and that specifically goes to the COVID resources. But
yeah. So again, these last slides you see every time you're with us with our webinars and additional links. And then here's the important part: if you want to get a hold of Housing Innovation staff, which staff are COC. Here are their emails. If you're not sure who you want to ask the question to, just use the first one, which is ctbosscoc@gmail.
And John, just a plug for the next COVID office hours will be on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Oh, thank you.
From DEMIS, talk about that in addition to our updates, but that's our.
I knew we had a topic list meant to ask it. Thank you.
Reminder. So the feds are releasing a 3-digit hotline for suicide prevention. 988. Yeah. So so stay tuned. That's going to be very important to have at our fingertips as well. Any last comments or questions in the chat box before we give you a couple minutes of your life back? Would love.
I'm just
Go
going to
ahead.
do one plug just to remind people that we record all of these. And so to go to the website and check them out. We had a great presentation last month on grief, and we've had some really talented, knowledgeable folks do presentations for us. So take a look. And if you can't find what you're looking for, shoot me a note and I can help you.
Great. Well, it looks like a lot of people are in the witness protection program this month because everyone's cameras are off. So I would encourage at this time, as we say our goodbyes to each other, to come on camera. Meredith, Jennifer, good to see you. Wave to everybody. Listen, these are the folks who have your back day in and day out. So be good to yourself, be good to the people you work with, stay healthy, wear your mask, wash your hands, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody. Happy Friday.
Have a good weekend.